Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to introduce to our final session of the Global Citizen Education Conference. The last session we will be having is going to feature a panel of guests, including Professor Pham, the president of Hanoi University, as our panel's chair. Joining Professor Hui is our organising committee. We'd like to introduce Professor Deanna Grant-Smith from QUT, Professor Sean Nyquist, Head of Global Citizenship Education Centre at Swinburne, Vietnam, Dr. Abby Winter from Queensland University of Technology, Dr. Marisha McAuliffe, Head of Student HQ at Swinburne, Vietnam, Dr. Chris Willems from the Australian Performing Arts Conservatory, and Ms. Madison Nguyen, Global Engagement Lead Student Services at Swinburne, Vietnam. The subject of today's panel will be reflecting on global citizenship in education, and each speaker will be given 5 minutes to express their thoughts. Thank you very much, and look forward to hearing you.
Okay, that's great to speak to all of you. So I am Pham from the University of Phenica in Vietnam. When we speak about the boundary for global citizen, then the story now is touched to everybody. I just remind that just before the COVID pandemic, 3 years ago, my office was knocked by one of the students, but she's not come from Vietnam. She actually come from Thailand, and just come to a university in Vietnam and asked for the application for the master program. So it means that the world is now more open, and in the Southeast Asia country, there's a policy that we will take the language of other countries at the secondary school in preparation for the university. And that is the true need for the next generation student. But from Vietnam education system, in order to integrate the training to provide students with skill for the global activity, we think it needs time, because the training program it fixed in a certain block, and we need to add extra curriculum, extra courses to the curriculum, and it really takes time, and especially for the trainer. At this moment we lack a trainer. For example, at my university, we intend to introduce into our training program several topics that will enhance the student capacity to go to join to the global world. But then when we look at the lecturer, then it is difficult. So I think one of the important topics is that we need to train our trainer, our lecturer for that topic. Secondly, we know that the COVID pandemic had a huge impact on our education system. And I must say that it is really difficult. At this moment, we had the test result for the last academic year, and the outcome is not good. The average point of students go down. So it means that we are now facing with many new problems, and how to keep the quality of our training. The student had been spent almost 2 years at home with very less activity. The interaction between teacher and student seemed lost, and that really affect good and bad impact on the outcome. So how we will help them to recover in the next 2 years until the graduation. That is another point I would like to raise here. And lastly, I know that the international education is now become more and more open. And the university, for example, in Vietnam, we know that many universities from abroad, from Australia, come to Vietnam. And the students now have more choice. They can easier to choose an appropriate university, a training program for them. And that it now the need that we need to provide more information to students to see what is the difference, what is the clarify the need for the student in the future, not now, but for the next 5 years, what is the really need skill or knowledge for students. Thank you.
Do you want to pass it across to Abby Winter? Dr. Winter?
Yes, please.
Thank you. From my perspective, I'm coming at it from a slightly different viewpoint probably than the rest of the panel, because my work at my university has been as a professional or administrative staff member. So most of my engagement with the global citizenship education that we do was around crunching the numbers of how many students are going places, how many are coming back. As a part of that, I got to see some of the delightful stories from those students who are coming back with their minds and understandings and abilities expanded in an enormous way. So that is where my interest and understanding for global citizenship initially started. I'm now in a different role, 3 jobs later, working with a lot of academics and researchers from many different parts of the globe. And so in everything I do, I'm seeing the usefulness and the advantages of not only having our people go out to places, but also enriching what we do by having people from other places come and join our work and our conversations.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Abby. So, for me, what I think about when I think about global citizenship education is I think about being able to agree to disagree. Because every single one of us come from a different background, we have different experience, and we sometimes have different ways of thinking. And sometimes we clash on that. And I'm drawing from personal experience, so I studied abroad. I spent quite a certain amount of years in New York where I did my high school and my undergrad. And I do believe that I had to adapt to the new culture that New York was a lot, because with my upbringing, I was a very traditional Vietnamese girl, you know. I was this dainty little girl, kind of perfect, always got good grades and all of that. But then I got introduced to a new society with a new group of people. And I had to adapt to that a lot. And other people obviously thought different from me. So I had to be able to accept their thoughts. I don't need to agree with them, but I have to be able to accept them. And with that, I believe that global citizenship education is all about being able to understand others, but not certainly always agree with others. Chris, do you want to share with us your thoughts next?
Yes. Firstly, I noted down some broad themes from the conference from yesterday, and there are quite a lot of them, and they're all very pertinent. And I won't just list them out, but there were some prominent ones like creativity and communication were very prominent. In fact, I think it was Mr. Samuel Ang would talk about 98% of business leaders thought that communication was the most important skill, and I certainly wouldn't disagree with that. And I think what conferences like this demonstrate is, especially after the pandemic, that it's so important to have these kind of conversations, even if one agrees to disagree. That's really the point in having the conversation, rather than sort of demanding that we all have the same view, because we clearly don't. But not having the same view is not a barrier to working together. It's not a barrier to teamwork, which is another theme that came yesterday. And things like problem solving and adaptability are very so important to apply to tolerate and apply in our work together as educators, whatever the context, and whatever the country that we happen to be in. So. The problems that we've had to solve over the last couple of years have been pretty immense for all of us, without exception. And we're still here, and we're still breathing, we're still talking to each other, which is a great thing. And I have to thank Dr. Marisha McCullough for bringing this conference to fruition, because it's such an important conversation to have for everybody on the planet, and increasingly so because the world seems so fractured at the moment. I like to say that art is more important than ever at the moment, but talking to each other is equally important. It's a very important thing to keep the conversations happening. And so, I'm immensely grateful to have been invited to be part of this. And I acknowledge the high value of all of the contributions to this conference. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I'm indeed very, very grateful that we have all of you here abroad. And in fact, most of the people that have been, in this conference have been either my direct friends or connections and within my network. And I'm incredibly grateful for that. I particularly resonated with Tridine Dobson's speech when she was talking about cultures and identity and leadership. And let me relate back to you two instances where it became very apparent to me where leadership was something that you lived and breathed and not just a title in your name. I was in India as a Pro-Vice Chancellor of a higher ed institution, and it was in West Bengal. And we had, in West Bengal, there's quite a few culture clashes and between Hindus and Muslims, and gathering or riots and mobs as a part of normal everyday culture. And I, of course, had been in leadership positions for years, and I had headed up a number of institutes and all the rest of it. However, one day we came, I had to, as the Pro-Vice Chancellor, to put into place implement the Indian government's enact their rule that there was a 75% attendance and it must be done, otherwise they wouldn't be permitted to take their final exams. Needless to say, that was definitely not a very popular policy. And I arrived up to work one day, and having been in, having gone through a number of riots, like travelling through, whatever, in my 3.5 years in India, it was quite a normal thing. And I could sense that there was a gathering started, and anyway, so it quickly escalated into a riot. And unfortunately for me, my fellow leaders were hidden in their offices and under their desks, terrified, like I was. But I realised that there was no other way to placate the crowd other than go out and face it. That, ladies and gentlemen, was one of the most difficult things of my life, to face a mob of rioting students, 400, coming at me. And I realised that day that it was about, it didn't matter whether or not I had the position or didn't have the position, I had to show leadership. And I was the only person in the leadership team that actually went out there and faced that mob. Now, leadership is about doing the difficult things when you don't want to do it. Leadership is about making the call when you don't want to do it. And that's about what we need to instill in our students, that it's not about rising up the chain of command and getting your manager or director in your role. It's about having to do it. Second example is also when in India, when COVID hit, one of my best friends across there is Mr. Andrew Ford. He was the Consul General for West Bengal and the surrounding 11 states. And it's through him that I actually met James Dean, who spoke yesterday. Now, Andrew is an incredible leader. Here he was as Consul General. He was, like me, one of the last Australians, sort of Australian-born Australians, to leave India in late June 2020. 2020? Yeah, 2020. And we had been locked down for 67 days. He was across one side of town and I was in the other. While he was locked down and there was rationing, no food could come in or anything, we had to ration. This man, Andrew, displayed such resilience, such strength and such leadership. And during that 67 days, his apartment block was on fire and he had to leave his apartment block because of the danger of the apartment block falling down. So then he went to his apartment, he went to a hotel to live. So the important thing is that it doesn't matter what is happening to you, it doesn't matter what is happening in your life, and it doesn't matter what your role is and what your title is. It's about demonstrating leadership, resilience, adaptability, and showing up when it's the most difficult. And I think that that's one of the most important things that I can resonate with Tradine Dobson about. So I'm going to pass across to Deanna, we're fascinated to hear your views.
Hi, so I work for the Queensland University of Technology within the Faculty of Business and Law. And one of the subjects that I teach is a very large subject where we have about 1,000 students per semester across every single one of the business disciplines. So we have a very diverse student cohort, which is made even more diverse by the fact that the business school is incredibly fortunate in that we have a lot of international students as well. And so I was listening to what Madison had said about how much she had learnt about being an international student herself. And I actually think that her modesty prevents her from recognising that while there is a learning opportunity for the student who goes to the international environment, they are actually providing a gift to the environment that they enter into. So I personally see the exchanges that my students have with the international experiences. I call it internationalisation at home, where they're actually having this wonderful, unique opportunity to engage with different cultures, different ways of thinking, different ways of approaching problems and the world, and that they can benefit just as much as the student who is having that international experience. And the reason I raise this is that when I think of what global citizenship education is about, it's really about achieving three things. The first of these is about connection. So everybody's been speaking about the fact that it's about finding ways to communicate and connect with people, to begin to understand different ways of thinking and being, and also to, I guess, in that process, understand yourself a little more. The second thing I think that global citizenship education offers to us is to teach students or assist them on their journey to develop respect for that diversity, because it is one thing to recognise it and to be able to effectively communicate with other people, but it's an entirely different thing to have a respect for other people. And I think that really shapes not just our interactions with other people, but the way that we move within the world ourselves. And finally, I think the third thing that global citizenship education allows us to do is really focus on sustainability in all of its forms. So it helps us to recognise, I guess, our own privilege, the kinds of things that we can enjoy within our own culture or circumstances that might not be the same elsewhere, and to see how we can improve situation for everybody, whether it's environmental, economic, or social. And part of that, when we think of this idea of internationalization at home, is often we will see students in Australia that will go on study tours to another country that might be a low or middle income country, and they go there to help others. It's almost a form of voluntourism, where they can feel good about themselves because they're assisting people who require their help, so to speak. And I actually think that undermines many of the things that global citizenship education is setting out to achieve, because you're not respecting other people, you're not recognizing the value, the benefit, the contribution that they make to their own and to our broader society. And I think that it also diminishes the way that students from these wealthier countries could actually turn their eyes to the problems that are within their own countries that they could actually help to address. So whether it's with lower socioeconomic communities or with our own Indigenous communities, our refugee communities, there are ways that we can help the world by looking in our own backyard. We don't necessarily have to go elsewhere to do that. And by having our international students, the thing that I enjoy in my classes is the way that they can open the eyes of my own students to the things that they don't see about our own culture. And for me, that's the gift that global citizenship education offers to both the travelling student and the student who is at home.
Thank you, Deanna. That was wonderful, and I can resonate with so many of those points that you mentioned there. I think I'll draw on our last keynote speaker's words about telling stories. In the previous session, she spoke so closely about how important it is to tell a story. So I'll start with a little story. I grew up in a small country town, rural town, farming town, and I thought I was just going to stay in that little town and probably be a farmer or work in the local area. I didn't think I'd be sitting here today in Hanoi speaking with so many wonderful people amidst so many wonderful presenters. But during my life, I've been also a teacher for over 25 years. I've been a student for all my life. I'm still learning. But one of my first teaching positions was in a town of 450 people. 450 people, not students. A small country town in the outback of Australia. And I like to connect and engage with students. I like to get to understand my students. I like to get to know them and learn myself. So, as I said, I'm always learning. And I realised that being global doesn't mean going to different countries. It's about mindset. It's about understanding people. It's about connecting with them. And I thought, I need to give these students some experiences. I need to get them out there. I need to show them the world. I need to show them what being global is. And this is over 20 years ago. And so I found a way to get a bus license. We'll discuss that later. But I got a bus license. I found a bus. A local organisation gave me a bus. And I grabbed these students, I put them on the bus, and we drove 13 hours to the Gold Coast in Australia. Mm-hmm. And what really got me was we stopped at the beach first because they had never seen most of them had never seen the beach. I stopped at the beach, and some of the students ran down to the water, other students were running on the sand, and one of the students just stood there and looked at the ocean. And I said, "Is everything okay?" He said, "I just never believed this is what the ocean would look like. This is not," he said, "the sounds, the smell, everything. I just never believed this is what the ocean would be, or that I'd ever get the opportunity to do this." And to me, that was a real eye-opener, and it got me thinking about what is my role as an educator? What are we teaching in schools? What are we teaching in universities? Do we have to stick to a rigid curriculum? Can we disrupt education? Can we change what we do in education? Can we look at it through a different lens? What are the experiences that are important? Where are these children that I taught 20 years ago? What are they doing now? And I have connected with some of them, or they've connected with me, and they've got some amazing stories, and they've gone so many places, and they still talk about these experiences. And I think we need to reflect on what our role is as educators, as people in global citizenship education, in universities, in colleges, whatever our role is here, whether we're working in World Bank or any of the organisations that we've had speak with us. What is our role and what is global citizenship, and how do we disrupt that education? How do we transform the lives of young people, or not just young people, transform lives in general?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing such a beautiful story. I think the world needs now become more and more open, and to train the student for the more global citizenship education. It now that the key word is creating the environment where people accept and respect the differences in culture, and where we create the environment where we can connect the people, where they can speak together, and we cannot have one model. I think it will depend on the location, on the country where the university were located, and through all, I think the language is important. The student need first, and even the connection between the student and the teacher, educator, that they have to speak the same language. They should understand each other and accept the differences. And as the educator, as a lecturer, we are ourselves have to prepare as well. Because when students come from different culture, from different country, they have different way of thinking, and even with the staff member, now we had different colleagues from faculty from different country, and they had different way of thinking, and that is the moment that we had, even at the university, we need to change our university system as well as our educational program.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. That brings us to the end of our panel discussion. I think that was some fascinating insights from everybody involved. Thank you very much for everybody who joined us online. Do we have any questions in the auditorium? Anybody would like to ask to any of our speakers?
Yes.
Sure, we have a question here.
So, hello everyone, to all the audience who are happen to be here or are viewing this session online. My name is Thanh Ha, and I'm a future Swinburne student. And I'm so fascinated by the sessions and all of your story and experience in terms of global citizenship educations. But I also have a few questions I would like you to answer and to somehow clarify my curiosity. Right, so the first question is global citizenship for everyone, and why we are talking about the scale of higher educations? Because it is something that I'm thinking in my mind right now. It's like, what is the value of global citizenship educations to the people who don't have the privilege to go to higher educations, or don't have the privilege to travel abroad, and they don't associate themselves with the Western cultures? Because somehow we were talking about the Western culture lens, like a professor from RMIT was mentioned before. And yeah, so should it be applied also to the lower educations, not just the higher one? Thank you.
Could I pose that question to Chris, please?
Ideally, it should, yes, be open to everyone. We live in a world that is, the reality of our world is that it's business driven and money driven and all those kinds of things. But we have to find ways. We have to find ways of accommodating everyone that wants to have that kind of education. Or any kind of education, really. And I was fascinated by Sean's beautiful story about the small boy at the ocean. It was just like it's so revealing, and it also reflects something that I wrote down from, I think it was Dr. Hahn, about doing stuff, about experiencing things. And I think if I quoted it correctly, when you travel, the road becomes more clear. And I think having the experience of education is what reveals what education is for you, for the individual, and for societies. And I think it's so important that we do make ourselves as educators available to as broad a range of people as possible.
Thank you very much. That was a great question, and thank you very much for your answer, Chris. Do we have any other questions? Oh, sorry.
Could I respond to that question also?
Of course.
Excellent. I just wanted to say, if we wait until we're in higher education, tertiary education, it's too late. We actually have to have global citizenship education right from the beginning. If you wait until you're at university, there's too much else that you have to learn. This is something that we learn throughout our lives, right from the beginning of it. And it's not something that we stop when we leave higher education. It's something that we should be continuing to learn and practice as professionals, as people within the world. So for me, education doesn't necessarily mean within a formal educational institution. It's just the process, as other people have said, of learning more generally, and that this should be right from the beginning to the end of our lives.
I think when we get why we need to when we speak it at the higher education level, because that is at the moment you prepare yourself for the future. You decide what to do in the future, where to go, and when you know you decide the direction where you go, you need to prepare for it. So and at the university level, where you will learn the skill, the expertise, and knowledge in a certain field. And for now, the world need becomes small, and when you think about the job, you not only think about a certain country, but you also can look at other country, and that is the moment you need to learn about the different culture that you would fit when you grow up, when you apply for job. So that is why at the university, one of the important take that the educator think about it, how to prepare for students, the skill that it needed for them when they apply for job, when they graduate from the university.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I believe that is going to bring us to the end of our panel section. That was an incredibly engaging speech by everybody, some amazing stories, and I hope everyone took away a lot from that. So I just want to say thank you very much for everybody who has joined us. Thank you very much, Professor Deanna, Dr. Christian, and Dr. Abby. Thank you for everybody on our stage as well, Dr. Sean, Madison, Professor Hui, and Dr. Marisha. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining. We're probably going to take a short break now, just to get some more refreshments, and then we will go into the closing ceremony, and we have a couple of speakers who will just be rounding up the conference. So thank you very much, everybody.